Howdy yet once again, this is tubalcain, your YouTube shop teacher. Welcome back to the shop, and you know, I'm just having one of my last cups of coffee here. I'm all hyped up and ready to go. Now this video is not meant to be a bragging session. If you think it is, then turn it off rather than discourage me on it. I'm just going to yap. There'll be no chips made, but I'm talking about my well, it's not really a collection, but I guess maybe you could say that it is, that I have 25 or 30 drill press vices, and I only need one. And this was all brought about by my recent videos where I made the Struck Casting Specialties vise. And I brought these out because there's so many different designs and different sizes, and what I'm going to do here is just muse about them and elucidate the different types of vices that I have, why I have them, although that will make no sense to you. But I've said many times, a man with many vices. So let's get on with it, and I think I'll start with the larger vices so I can get them off the table. Now there are duplicates here too. There's always duplicates. Furthermore, if I went to a sale today or tomorrow, I would probably buy yet another one if it was cheap, because I am incredibly cheap and I'm not about to pay any money, and none of these were purchased new. You know, I don't ever buy anything new. Let me talk about the Casting Specialties vise first here, if I can get it out of the way, and I know I'm beating that subject to death, but I think most everybody in the Western Hemisphere has seen these three videos where I built this vise, but then in the follow-up, if you haven't seen that follow-up video, I discovered that I still had this Dunlap vise, and also I think I told you that recently that I had to go to the doctor, and the doctor examined me, and then he sat down to the desk and he says, Mr. Peterson, I gotta tell you, you got a disease. You got Dunlap's disease. And I said, what? Is it serious? And he said, well, I don't know how serious it is, but I said, what is Dunlap's disease? He said, well, your belly Dunlapped over your belt. Rim shot. Well, why am I showing you this cheap die-cast vise? This is zinc. I mentioned it in the other video, and you can see the ejection pin marks here. But this is a repetition, really. But this vise could not be any more identical to this vise by Struck in appearance and dimensions. They are absolutely the same. So I brought that up in the other video, which came first, the chicken or the egg. You know, did Mr. Struck copy this, or did Dunlap copy the Struck vise? I don't know. So anyway, I won't say any more about this, but I've had several of these over the years, and one of them was bent here. It was bowed. If you laid a straight edge across the bottom here, where's a straight edge? I don't even have one. Got 100 rulers and none at my... There was a great big bow there because someone had tightened it up so tight that they caused it to bend. It was Bubba, of course. And notice that they probably knew that was going to happen and provided it with a very, very short little stubby handle where you could not get the leverage. But this would suit somebody in a small shop that does some work. I don't know if they make them anymore. Sears often sold Dunlop tools years ago as one of their cheaper lines, not the Craftsman line. Off the subject, and this will be a very, very long video, so I invite you, I dare you to turn it off unless you want to listen to 45 minutes of gabbing. But both Tom and Adam Booth showed one of these recently. I've had one of these kicking around for a long time. I didn't really know what it was. It's black granite, but I believe that it's just meant as a paperweight, as an advertisement for this particular company here, a Microflat. I didn't know there was an actual use for it. I just thought it was a desk piece, and that's what the felt is for. And the 3 or 4 times I darn near threw it away. Well, enough on that. That's a non sequitur. You see these vices in every box store. They're Chinesium. Now I'm taking words from AVE, but I thought it was a pretty clever word, but I don't like to steal his thunder. It's a 4-inch vise. And it also would and it's got an Acme screw, kind of a nice handle on it, so that would be suitable. And I think this is a $15 or $20 vise, and it's got even replaceable jaws. I hate it myself, but I haven't had the nerve to throw it away yet. I only have a couple other Chinesium vices, so I'll show those and then we'll move on and get these heavy ones off the bench here. This is a 4-inch. This is pretty much the same in a 3.5 inch, and that's still got the price tag on it from when I bought it at a garage sale. But you may remember this from another video where I did a job with it, and these are tilting vices. And when I got done with the job, the work was scrapped because this vise wasn't square, or I forgot, or maybe the protractor portion on it was no good. So this is an absolute piece of garbage. They obviously didn't check it at the factory, and they didn't care, or they didn't know any better, but it really is a piece of junk that they should be ashamed of. I've never checked this one for accuracy. This has about a 1/2 inch diameter screw, and this is larger, probably 5/8, but it may well be metric too. But if you want a tilting vise fairly cheap, those are the ones you can get. If you bought an American one, it would cost a king's ransom. I'm going to show you some more tilting ones in a minute. Sometimes you find these vices also on a 2-axis thing. Well, I'm going to show you one of those later, American made though. So anyway, I don't like these. This one definitely is going to a flea market or something, or tool sale. I got to get it out of here before I use it again. One other thing on this vise, they did know how to make it pretty. They took the time to plate this piece. They plated the screw and the handle. So on the store shelf, for the uninformed, that is a vise that maybe they had to have, and it would have been priced right. Okay, the ubiquitous Palmgren vise, and I thought I had a bunch of these in this size, but I don't. I really only have one in the genuine Palmgren brand, and it's 2.5 inch, and this really is a wonderful little vise. And a lot of people modeled homemade vices, or other companies copy this because it's such a nice one. And I always liked Palmgren. I'm not sure if they're still made in this country. And here is a vise I've had for many years, and it's Japanese, old enough to where it's Japanese, not Taiwanese, and this is very well made, and in fact is one of my very favorite vices here in tubalcain shop. But let me say a couple other things here about Palmgren, and some of this stuff is a repeat. I know it is. I found that it's necessary to repeat some things because people do not go back and watch the older videos, and I have constantly new subscribers, new viewers. This is a 4-inch Palmgren. That I told you this came out of a high school. What I liked about it, well, what I hate about it is it's beat up. Look at it, it's just drilled through, and it's got a Acme thread. That's a big plus. A nice handle on it, and I like this hex right here on the screw, because one can use an Arkansas socket wrench to tighten it up and have more leverage than what this 4-inch long handle affords. Notice in the design of this that they cast this such that there was no need for them to machine up against this surface. So that was brilliant design. Probably the same thing underneath this fixed jaw here, and that's why that jaw has an angle on it, so that they didn't have to get into the corner and worry about that, because they were making these by the thousands. And this is a heavy vise, and it's really nice. In my many long years of experience in a school shop, I have seen kids, this is kind of humorous if it wasn't so pathetic, drill through relatively thin work like this, through the work, through the vise, and then through the drill press table. So even though it's 1/4 inch stock, they drilled a hole that was 3 or 4 inches deep and left a path of destruction behind them that is still there wherever that drill press is. You know, still got a big hole in it. Some of you may own this Palmgren milling attachment for your lathe, and they essentially used their ubiquitous vise here and adapted it for that, so they didn't need to make a totally new vise. Parts bin engineering is what I call it. Although this is a nice attachment, I'm not really criticizing it. I like this Palmgren vise, and it's a little bit bigger than the other one. It is 3 inches, and it's got the lugs on the side so you can bolt it down. Nicely made. I liked it so much I got 2 of them. Or I guess, no, I'll take that back. I liked them so much I got 3 of them. This particular one I can hold in the bench vise and do small work on it, and the jaws, of course, are not going to mar the work because they're smooth jaws. And those are nice. They've never been, well, I started to say they've never been drilled, but this one has a couple pecks in it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. They plated this one, and this one is not plated. Notice that this one is not cast with the Palmgren, probably because they sold these to other companies and they could put a decal on here, Craftsman or just about anybody that wanted to buy them as their own brand. So I think that's why I'm deducing that they took their name off of it. And I do like the hammer tone paint. You know, the engineers at Palmgren, or I should say probably the bean counters, they were quite ingenious in that they essentially took the same vise and made it into a tilting vise. Although there is some modification there. That is, it's rounded here, and I don't know if that was done. Yeah, it was cast that way. So that's a nice little vise. But what is not nice is that, if I can find it on here, oh, they got a protractor on there, but it's bordering on the worthless because it's small. It's too small. The larger the protractor, the more accurate it's going to be. So I would like to have a protractor that's 4 inches in diameter, but of course there's no room for that, and it would be only semi-accurate and get you in the ballpark. You would use a Starrett protractor if you wanted real accurate settings. Now, a lot of people copy that vise as well, and here's one that is, Chinesium. Got the heck drilled out of it here. Even there, you know, how'd they get holes over there? And this protractor is still small, but it's applied in a different manner. It is cast iron and certainly usable, and they plated that screw for some reason. Oh, here's a point. I'm trying to make some points here too. That in this case, they started with smaller stock. The diameter here is smaller than the diameter of this, and that there's still one other one here. This says Japan on it, so it must be pretty old. But it has an Acme screw, a large Acme screw. That's a big, big plus. And I'm not sure what kind of keeper they have right here because I don't see a screw. Most of them are held in with a screw and a groove, like on that struck vise that I showed you. I'd have to look underneath to see how that's put together. But that's enough on these tilting vices, I guess. Let's move on. I guess I'm not done with tilting vices here. I thought I was, but I bought this a couple years back at an auction. It was $15, more than I wanted to pay. And really what I wanted, I don't care two hoots about the tilting mechanism. I was going to take it apart and throw it away because this little vise is absolutely darling. And I wanted to use it just as a general, it's 1.5 inches. And I know that Palmgren probably made that one that small, but I've never seen it. Palmgren had maybe still does, a complete catalog with vices and other work holding devices, and rotary tables and things like that. So they aren't a one-line company. They were pretty awesome. I guess they're still in business. Anyway, I never did take it off, but maybe I will throw everything away except the vise because I don't do a lot of angle drilling, and if I do, I normally do that on the milling machine. There's no brand on this. I don't know what that says, but it's not the brand. But that's one of my favorite vices. And this is my single favorite vise on the entire table, although it's beat up, but it's probably 80 years old. It's either a Miller's Falls or a Yankee, or a Stanley. Eventually Stanley bought Yankee, I believe. It's got the Acme thread. I love those little ball ends there, and it's just as cute and darling and just nice for model work and small work. It is missing one of the jaw plates, and someone said, well, you're a machinist, make one. Never got around to it. The shoemaker goes with holes in his shoes, you know. Here's two identical 2.5 inch vices, and they're made by Miller's Falls, or at least the one is marked as such. And some of you may not be familiar with that brand, but boy, they made everything from micrometers to all kinds of woodworking tools, and yet they're long gone now. Notice the groove here, right in the casting, not in the jaw, and it has a swing jaw, so you can hold tapered work or straight work if you are of a mind. But for instance, here's 10 degrees, and I can hold 10 degrees. Now, I was at the Grizzly store in Springfield, Missouri, and they sold a device to do this, but it just fit in any other vise. Maybe it was a bench vise, and they were jaws that would swing like this. They pivot. So that's kind of clever, I think. So that's a very, very old vise. You can see it's pretty dusty. I doubt I ever used it. This one's a little better. I don't think it's got holes drilled in it. And I'm not sure what the mechanism is for that. Oh, both of these vices have holes drilled and tapped. At first I thought, when I looked at one of them, that somebody had defaced it. But some of these vices came with a stand. And you could screw the stand onto the bench and then use this as a bench vise. And some of those stands also tilted or swiveled and did different things. But that probably was at extra cost. But that's what those tapped holes are for. This is also one of my favorite vices, although if it's my favorite, how come I never used it? It could be screwed down to a bench. It's got an Acme thread, of all things. For such a tiny little vise, how wide is it? Looks like it's about 1.5 inches. Yeah. And on the bottom, it's very cheaply made, because that keeper there is just you can see how that's inserted without any machining in these little, almost looks like a T-slot there that allows you to disassemble it. Oh boy. What does that say on there? Can't read it. I cleaned this up and it says Stern, Syracuse, New York. And now I remember that name. They were on other clamps and woodworking devices, older stuff. They didn't even machine the bottom of that. That's just rough cast. So this would have been a very, very cheap vise, but for some reason I like it. All right. Now this vise I do not value at all, and I have it really, I had to go out in the garage and get it. It's on my welding bench, because this is one that I will use to hold metal if I'm welding, but now upon further examination, it's a pretty nice vise. Crudely made with machining marks there that they didn't bother taking out, but this is a nice vise. And I love these big balls. Now, why am I spending so much time on this? Well, I'm not. But do you know that probably, I don't have the exact figure, but probably about 80% of all machining is drilling or in some way forming holes. Not always on the drill press, but you think about it. The quantity of the holes that are drilled in any given product. So holding the work is really important. All right, let's set that aside and talk about some other vices here. I bought this at a sale last summer for $1, and that's about 90 cents too much. Well, why did I buy it? it couldn't be any uglier. It's homemade. This is threaded rod here and a nut welded on, and it would have to be cleaned up, but I have no intentions of doing that, and I still might throw it out. But why did I get it? Because I thought possibly I should use this as a project and come up with a very similar device that is a fabrication, a weldment for those that do not have machine tools, but yet have a welder and a saw and a drill. So, and I still may do that someday, but there you can see the guide rods, and that's a piece of tubing and a flat iron, and you know, whoever came up with this was pretty resourceful and clever. Alright, I know there's some ladies watching me, either alone or with their husbands, and they're making fun of me. You know, this guy is nuts with 30 vices. Well, I dare you to tell me, ma'am, how many pairs of shoes do you have in your closet? So this is no crazier than somebody that has a lot of shoes. These are some of my favorite vices. I think they're the cleverest. They're called a speed vice by, right there, Cardinal Machine Company, Glendale, California, and I believe you can still buy these. They are quite expensive, and this is a 3-incher, and this is a 4-incher. Maybe they made other sizes too, I don't know. But the thread is a buttress thread. And I remember them having this in a shop that I worked at many years ago, and I thought that was so neat. So that's a buttress thread, so you can just drop that into the nut. It's a half nut is what it is. That can quickly be slid into any position, hence the name, and tightened down. It's got a nice handle on it, knurled. You know, they just went the extra mile on this, and this one is, you know, there's no holes pecked in there. Should take that to school. The kids would take care of that. This one, 4-inch. That's a heavy vise. Oh my gosh. Surely your sins will find you out. I hope I didn't pay much for that. But isn't that awesome? Notice that this jaw is a separate piece and bolted on. And the other bolt on this end apparently holds the half nut on, which could be, yeah, there's the other end of the bolt, which could be replaced, because that probably would wear. The only thing that I don't like about this vise, well, a couple things. First of all, chips collect here and get packed in, and until all of a sudden you're not getting it's just stripping out, so you have to stop and clean that with a scriber. One other thing is that there is no through hole here to drill through, so this is just inviting people to drill into it. But at least they didn't drill all the way through, and that's kind of surprising. But you know, sometimes you should have enough sense if you're drilling steel that at some point you're not getting curly shavings anymore, you're getting cast iron dust. You know, that should be your first clue. Okay, I changed my mind. This is my favorite kind of vise. This is a Heinrich. Now you've seen me use a Heinrich cross drill jig many times. And I like those jaws because they're step jaws that allow you to hold the work up high. And again, these are hardened rods. So should you drill through the work, there is a tendency for the drill bit then to deflect or possibly even break or cause sparks, and then you realize that you're not going any place with that. But that's a nice, and these are replaceable jaws. Now, how does the mechanism work? You know, I did take one of these apart once to examine them, but I don't remember. It is just a patented locking device, and they have used that locking device in many of their other products. In fact, you can buy just this piece here along with the rod and the handle, and I think there's bolt holes in it that can be used in various other drill jigs that are used in factories. So that mechanism itself is sold separately. So that's awesome, and of course I got that in 2 sizes. I don't know how many sizes they make. Here's the 4-incher, and this one's also in perfect shape. There's the mechanism. Oh, I remember now, it's adjustable with that little knurled knob there as far as the tension, because you tend to want that when you're tightening your work to lock down all the way, not be tightened maybe in that position where you can knock it and the work would come loose. And this one came with the optional, I don't know, enough strength in my, yeah, that optional hardened jaw, which clips right in and it really stays in there nice with those springs. This is a quality product. I suspect, I don't remember that, I bet this is a $200 vise. It's quite heavy. Heinrich. Put that on your wish list. You know what, I almost forgot to show this vise. This is an Atlas product. They probably sold it in the Craftsman catalog years ago too. And it's a 2-axis with dovetails and cranks. And we had one of these when I was in high school. In fact, this is the exact vise that I used, not the exact model of vise that I used when I was a student and made that Stewart engine 60 years ago almost. So you put your work in here, and then these cap screws can be tightened. There's T-slots here, and then this tightened. A little bit awkward, but then you had very accurate positioning for that. And back when I did that, we didn't have vertical milling machines, so this in effect was giving the accuracy almost of a milling machine. And they're graduated dials here in thousandths, although these are corroded and almost impossible to read. And that is what is the subject, if I could reach over here, of a future video where I talk about enlarged dials like this on my Atlas lathe. But this is an Atlas product. These are kind of rare. This one is perfect because there's no holes drilled. And when I bought this, if you watch one of my real old videos where I bought that Atlas Craftsman lathe, this was mounted on the cross slide of all things by, you know, the former owner. What he was doing with that, or if it was meant to be used on a lathe as well, I don't know. But anyway, that's the Atlas. Let me show you just one more. I should show you one more thing on this Atlas vise here. Do you recognize this? That looks exactly like the cross slide from the Atlas lathe, and in fact it probably is. This guard looks familiar too, and there is a protractor over here, and I never have actually cleaned this up since I got it. I still got all that grime from the farm on it. It was an unheated building, but yet this is something I value for some reason. I don't know why. And then that'll fit on there the same. Whoops, I just dropped one of the pins. The same as the compound attaches to the Atlas lathe, and it goes right over that dovetail. How awesome is that? You know, this is Wilton, and Wilton makes a complete line of vices, I believe, still, but I think that they're imported. But remember when Jim Kohler gave this to me a few months ago, and this would mount right on a drill press. And this is a very heavy vise. I think they made it in a smaller version. Again, 2 axes here with graduated collars, and this is meant to be bolted down, of course. And this is, I think, a 6-inch vise. And this is brand new. Jim gave that to me, brand new. He said he never had used it, and it was just in his way. So here it is on my Delta drill press. So that's awesome. Thanks again, Jim, for that. These vices are all what you call Toolmaker vices, and some of them are homemade. Now, this particular one here, and they were sold in pairs, and this is a Brown and Sharp, but it is missing the jaw, and I only got one of them, and it looks like somebody drilled a hole. I don't think that was factory. But I wish I had a pair of the Brown and Sharps, but I only got the one. And here's a pair in the original box, the Starrett box, old enough to where it's not the red box, but those are Starretts. And I do value these highly. Remember, that jaw comes off. Whoops. And it's held on. See, there's a little ball there with there's a spring in there, so you can change the jaws. And they're meant to swing like that. So I got a pair of those in the original box. That's awesome. This little one, did I ever tell you I like Starrett tools? That's the smallest vise I got, and I suspect this is a 50-cent vise, or maybe even a boy's vise, but it does come into scale with a little drill press like that, doesn't it? I've never used it. Here's a homemade one. Now that's a clever spin on holding a handle in there with a spring and a knurl there. It's kind of nice. There's only one of those. And then there's another, I believe homemade, got a man's name on it. But this is one that I bought at a sale. And then later on, if you watch the video where I made a pair of these, that's a several part video a couple of years ago. One I blued and one is just plain. Well, I found the drawings in the book, and if you watch that video you'll see the drawings for that. But upon examining this, many years later I realized that whoever made this made it from the same drawings, because it's absolutely identical. And they did a nice job on it. That would be one Mr. Hart that made that. I'm sure he's been taking his dirt nap for 40 or 50 years already, because these were war training drawings. And you can make a set of these if you want, if you look back at one of my old videos. A couple things became evident to me just recently, and that is that there is an outfit in Ohio that's still producing these castings along with a drawing, the identical struck casting. So if anybody wants one of those, because I had told you you can't get these castings, well you can. And they're about $18, and there's a website that's shown on the other video, so I'm not going to repeat that. But then looking at these, someone gave me a link and said, hey, you can buy castings for these. So I did. I've only had these for one day. And I got those off of eBay from this man, and I don't know if he has a lot of them or if this is just a one-shot deal, but there's two beautiful little cast iron castings for a vise, something like this. And matter of fact, it's 2 7/8 long, and there is a drawing for it. He doesn't even have a nameplate in the corner here, but there's the drawing, and it came with the jaw. Now the jaw will be cut in two. That's enough material there for both of them. I thought that was clever. And it came with a little package with 2 cap screws, and there's a set screw here, and 2 of these, and that is the knob. I believe those are pressed on there. And you got a knob similar to this. Of course, you could make your own screw too, but these are cap screws, and they're, you know, that would make it a lot easier. So check that out if you're interested, because that's a reasonable price. Because when I made these, I think I paid that much probably for a bar of steel, including shipping, to make these. And there we got nice gray iron. And a nice drawing. So there's a good project for some of you. I don't know how long this video is or was, but if anyone is still with me, let me know. I wonder how many people actually watched the whole thing. Also, if there's anybody out there from the dark continent, that is from Africa, any country in Africa, let me know. I have heard from people from South Africa, and recently a man from Morocco, of all places. And you know, I just am unaware that some of these countries even have internet service, but I guess that they're a lot more developed maybe than what I thought they were from the old Tarzan movies that I saw. So, did you get quite enough of my vices? And have I sufficiently done this? This is tubalcain saying so long for now, and thank you for watching. See you in the next video.